Welcome Salesforce partners to our Communications Cloud webinar. I'm Richard Usher, the Alliances Director for Revolent and the 10th Revolution Group. For those that don't know, Revolent are a workforce development partner of Salesforce. Via a hire, train, deploy model, we bring net new talent into the ecosystem. We also have training provisions to upskill and reskill. The aim of the next 40 or 50 minutes is for us to outline details of the pathway and for you to hear some best practice from our panel of industry experts. There's a Q&A session at the end if you'd like to leave any questions in the chat, and we can answer them at the end of the day. I'm really thankful, and we're all very lucky for the three exceptional speakers that we have here today. So thank you very much, the three of you, for joining us and sharing your knowledge. Firstly, I'll hand over to Georgii to start his intro.
Great, thanks, Richard. Okay, so to introduce myself, my name is Georgii Saveliev. I'm a communications cloud architect and trainer at Revolent. I'm based in Dubai in the UAE. I co-lead the Dubai Salesforce Architect Group, and then related to Comms Cloud, I was with Velocity and then Salesforce Industries for 4 years as a program architect and have been working in the space for 5 years now and almost a decade in Salesforce. For Comms Cloud, I've been involved in 10+ implementations across EMEA and APAC. And then I was also a contributor to the industry CPQ developer core developer certification and the Communications Cloud accredited professional credential exams. I'm a Salesforce certified technical architect, or CTA, and very passionate about certifications and learning. I have 40 Salesforce certs and 2 Salesforce APs. So that's a bit about me. And on to Rochus.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes, thank you. So my name is Rochus. I'm based in Munich in Germany. I work for Revolent as an enablement director for SFI. I've been working for 21 years in communications CRM, the last 6 years in Velocity and in Salesforce Industries. During my time at Velocity, we started the Velocity Expert Services EMEA section, where we worked on internal, external enablement. We provided performance workshops to our partners to ensure that best practices were kept and best performance could be reached. We worked on proactive quality assurance programs to review implementation of projects to see that best practices were kept. We have been mainly working in communications, media, energy, health, and financial services cloud, and supported with this more than 100 projects around the world.
Thank you, Rochus. And last but certainly not least, we have Jeff from Salesforce.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Great. Yeah, hi, nice to meet you, and thanks for the invite from the Revolent group. So yeah, Jeff Bygrave, I'm a Salesforce employee. I work within the Salesforce Industries team. Salesforce Industries is the kind of part of Salesforce where, in particular, things like the Communications Cloud solution rolls up into. So I've been involved in selling and supporting Communications Cloud, as it's called now, or Velocity before that, into quite a few operators. I think we've got a fairly good range of operators across both fixed and mobile, across consumer, wholesale, and business. I think we've seen a number of patterns in the implementations, so really happy to kind of support this webinar and give my view and input really as to, I think, what from a partner and then from a customer point of view, the critical elements of success. Yeah, I think that's the key thing for me is really making sure that partners are deeply skilled in not just the Salesforce capabilities. I think those are important, but in the industry specific elements, and really blending that with more widespread telco domain knowledge, I guess. Myself, I've been involved with the TM Forum, for example, the telco standards body, and I think what you'll see is that certain patterns, and I won't go into all of the technical details because Rochus and the team will do that, but there's certainly a point where the technology and the standards meet, and I think those are really interesting and important areas for deployment. So Thanks for the invite. I'll stay online throughout the session. Happy to answer questions as they come up in the chat, but also at the end.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeff. So in terms of our agendas today that the team will go through, we'll look at the best practices for designing enterprise product catalog and digital commerce and cart-based APIs, order management, so commercial and technical product model, common causes for product delays, and then build internal communication cloud expertise. I'll hand you back to the team now to start the pathway.
Good. So let's have a look at the best practice for designing enterprise product catalog. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so key for a successful project always is and has been performance. Performance is triggered by a lot of things, best practices, functionality, and performance. Very often we've seen in projects a tug of war between functionality against performance. The more functionality in projects we try to cover, the more performance could cover. So we should be very careful about the quantity of functionality, about the complexity, not to impact too much performance. In many projects, we see it's important to simplify product models, pricing rules, and product rules. So one of the key things that we saw in projects is we should limit the number of hierarchy levels of product structures to 4. We should limit bundles to 10 child items. We should prioritize context rules over advanced rules, given that context rules are a lot faster than advanced rules. We will have to ensure that governor limits are honored, especially when we do repricing, when we do a big repricing of a card with complex pricing rules. A card repricing could break our governor limits. Very important is to take advantage of the caching that Salesforce industry is providing. This caching should be done well from the very beginning, as doing caching later on may be complex. Pricing customizations can have a big impact on performance. We should design for performance. So the pricing customization should be well thought, well implemented, well tested, as it can have a big impact. CPQ parameter settings are to be well defined from the very beginning. Once a project is started and we try to modify CPQ parameters, it can have a big impact on the project. Also very important when replacing a legacy CRM, for example, from Siebel to Salesforce Industries, we should avoid a lift and shift and replace or move one-on-one functionality and the product structures from the legacy CRM into Salesforce Industries. It is a perfect point to consider reviewing the business processes and the related requirements to reduce complexity and ensure that our project will be faster and well implemented. Over to the next one. Georgii.
Thanks, Rochus. So let's talk about CPQ. So we'll talk about digital commerce and the card-based APIs. Next slide, please. All right, so when we talk about CPQ is all around the sales process. This is how we can take in orders from customers, generate quotes from customers, all of that. And if we look at CPQ, there are 2 sets of APIs that are available. There is the digital commerce APIs and the cart APIs. So if we're designing a guided process, if we're designing an API to take in orders or quotes from another system, we need to decide which of these 2 sets of APIs to use. And touching on Rochus's topic around performance is one of the main differentiators of these 2 APIs. So let's start with the digital commerce APIs. Digital commerce APIs are high-performance B2C customer-facing APIs that are well-suited for customer-facing new provide journeys. The key differentiator of them versus the cart APIs are they support anonymous browsing, meaning that you as a customer don't need to identify yourself, share your location, all of that. You'll be able to view the catalog, add products to your basket and all of that without identifying yourself. And then you identify yourself just at the very end. The out-of-box UI support for them is limited. The out-of-box AngularJS and LWC/FlexCard based carts do not support the digital commerce APIs. Those use the cart APIs. So using the digital commerce APIs requires you to implement the UI layer. If we look at the cart APIs, these are used out of the box by the LWC cart and AngularJS cart, and these support basically all of the industry CPQ features, MACDs, in-flight amendments, anything you can really think of. The performance is worse on these compared to digital commerce APIs, but they do support basically all the functionality. So these are a good fit for agent-facing scenarios, and when you don't need the feature, when you need to use features that are not supported by the DC APIs. Next slide, please. So we put together some criteria here of DC APIs and cart APIs and how to select between them for these different criteria. And when you're going on a new project and you're deciding, okay, which set of APIs do I need to use? Or if you're looking at the Communications Cloud AP exam and you have questions around this, these are the factors that you should consider. So if we start from the top on the optimal use case, the best use case for the DC APIs is B2C, customer-facing new provide journey. So that means you as a customer, if you're going in and selecting a mobile phone, a mobile service, adding some VASs, entering your delivery address, doing a payment, that would be a good fit for the DC APIs. The cart APIs are good for B2B scenarios, good for quoting and ordering when it's the agent doing it on behalf of the customer, also MACDs and in-flight amendments. From performance point of view, the DC APIs are faster in performance compared to the cart APIs, especially with the new standard DC APIs. From a user interface point of view, DC APIs have the DC LWCs, but these have limited configurability, so you may not want to use them in real life on real projects, whereas the cart-based APIs support the LWC cart out of box and the MACD and change of plan OmniScript. Another very important point is on the anonymous versus known customer. So DC APIs support both, where the customer has identified themselves and where they have not. And the cart APIs require that a customer be in the system, so you need to have a customer there and identify themselves. From a feature point of view, DC APIs support new provide, MACD, product versioning, product spec, and promotions, and cart APIs basically support everything that is in industry CPQ. The main idea here is these are not mutually exclusive. So for a given use case, typically you'll use one or the other, but for your whole implementation, maybe for some use cases, you'll use one. For other use cases, you'll use the other. So just keep that in mind when you're making this decision. So that was a bit on CPQ. Let's talk about order management. From order management point of view, the key thing that we want to talk about here is the difference between the commercial and the technical product models. If you're new to the communications industry, this is a bit of a hard concept to digest at first, so it's important to get the foundations here. The general idea is that the commercial product model on the left-hand side here is what the customer and what the sales reps see during the sales process. So this is all of the important information that drives the price that you as a customer care about, things that you as a customer want to configure, like number of gigabytes that you have on your mobile plan, that sort of thing. The technical products on the right-hand side are what our downstream systems need to know to be able to successfully fulfill and process our order. So for example, we would need to send our order downstream to a provisioning system, to a billing system, to some other systems. Maybe for the billing system, we need to send it billing codes. I, as a customer, you as a customer, don't care about billing codes, but we need them for the order to be processed correctly. That's the idea of the technical product model. And then between them, we have the product spec that connects the commercial product over to the technical products that compose it. Next slide, please. So when you're thinking about product modeling, you'll need to come up with, assuming that your implementation is using industry's order management, you'll need to come up with a commercial catalog. This is what you'll use in EPC and CPQ during the sales process. And the technical catalog, this is what you'll use after decomposition and what will be ultimately sent to the downstream systems to fulfill or provision your order. So the commercial catalog contains all of the commercial products which will be sellable to customers. This should contain the commercially relevant information, meaning what your customers and sales reps care about, what influences the price, what needs to be configured by our customers and sales reps. And ultimately, these details will be surfaced in the CPQ, in the cart, and your guided selling journey. The technical catalog, on the other hand, consists of the products which will hold the service layer information for the corresponding commercial products, meaning the information that we're sending downstream during fulfillment. Technical products are which are not orderable will not be visible in the cart, so they don't appear during the sales process, only after we decompose. And then products and details needed to fulfill orders in the downstream systems. This is really the information that we have in the technical catalog. So the core concept is to separate these things out, and then you map between the commercial to the technical with the decomposition rules and decomposition engine in Comms Cloud. So make sure you have this concept down and make sure that you're able to separate these things on your implementations. Okay, so why is it important to have separate catalogs for the commercial and technical products? I would say in general, there are really two main reasons. One is clarity. We want the commercial catalog, the things that the customer sees during the sales process, to be simple for the customer to understand. We aren't confusing them with billing codes and other technical jargon that will scare them away. So clarity is one important piece. And then performance is another very important piece. The more attributes, products, fields, etc., that we have on our commercial products, the worse performance will be. So we want to take all of that out of the commercial product as much as possible so that our CPQ is as performant as possible. And you'll notice that performance goes across all of these areas and is something to always be thinking about. And that's it for me. I will hand it off.
So let's look into the common cause of project delays. So can we go? Yes, please. In the numerous projects that we have been supporting with the Velocity Expert Services team and later on in Salesforce Industries, we saw a common pattern around projects that went southwards. One very common thing was that expectations and requirements were exceeding the Communications Cloud capabilities. Communications Cloud is it's a great tool, but as all the tools have certain limitations and boundaries. So the limitations of cloud communicational functionalities are to be known by the consultants, by people that work on the projects, to ensure to inform the customer at time that some of the requirements that customers may have will fall out of the communication cloud limitations. One thing that we saw a lot on projects that didn't go very well was an over-configuration or an over-customization of the implementation to overcome the limitations of the communicational functionalities. We have seen that suboptimal design decisions from previous stages have not been corrected at time and have been dragged through all the phase of a project, which in the end led to a suboptimal implementation. Very often we saw that performance and load testing has not been followed strictly, so that once a project went live, all of a sudden there was an issue after going live when the application first hit the customer, which is the worst thing to do to the public, as all of a sudden things went wrong. Breaching governance limits and/or application constraints are very important to know and to honor in the implementation of a project. Not honoring best practice, I'm not only talking about EPC, but about Omni Studio, about integration procedures and data raptors, can bring down performance quite a lot. And one very important point is the missing DevOps strategies. DevOps is something which is vital for a successful project. DevOps has to be thought about and done. Processes have been established from the very beginning of a project and followed through by every single person that is working on this project. So we see that the lack of product knowledge and product expertise can really bring a project down. If we go to the next one, we come to the solution for that. Yep. So it is important, it is key to a project to build the right expertise in your project teams. For this, we have defined the training program for Salesforce Communication Clouds, which is designed to equip participants with best practices, considerations and limitations to consider to prepare for and pass communications AP cloud exam. It is very important to show people to have your consultants being trained, having the right expertise for communication cloud projects. During this training program, participants of this program will solve a case study in small groups, covering all communication cloud modules, which is including the data model, which is including the Omni Studio, the EPC facets, the CPQ, digital commerce, order management, CLM, and document generation. We will do all this around a case study where we have small groups. These small groups will prepare a solution for the case study for each of these parts, and they will be presented to the live instructors, which is simulating a design review situation. We will go through the solution. We will look at the presentation and review the presentation skills to ensure that people are optimally prepared for a communications cloud project. As you can see, we have some prerequisites for this communications cloud course. So it would be very important to have participants of these courses to be certified in Omni Studio as a developer or a consultant, and on CPQ, an industry CPQ itself. Industry CPQ is the basis of most of the things that you see that we cover in this training, especially on EPC and CPQ and on DC and on OM. Below you see the route that we've taken. We will do a small introduction. We will go into EPC, the data model, the CPQ. We will cover digital commerce, CLM, order management, application suite like ESM and MSM. We'll go into DevOps, and we will do exam readiness to ensure that people are optimally prepared for the Communication Cloud AP exam. Can you go further? Thank you. So as said, the way that we deliver this training is through a combination of pre-recorded theory. So we have hours of video material recorded for you that our participants will have access to. We will teach the best practices and demo videos. The case study sessions will be instructor-led. So the participants of the trainings will be led to reach to the right solution. Also, we will have an office hour once a week, usually, as an open forum for questions and answers to ensure that all the material that we are presenting to the participants of the training are well understood and can be clarified during these office hours. The training itself is primarily offered virtually, as we have our webinar here, but it can also be arranged in person if necessary. We will have 48 hours of instructor-led hours. We will have 12 office hours as part of this training. We will have 20 hours of theory and demo videos, which adds up to a total of 80 hours for all the Communications Cloud training. Options that we're doing is currently are either a 12-week course with 1 4-hour session every week plus office hours. We can even concentrate this a bit more into a 6-week course where we have twice 4-hour sessions per week plus the office hour. Or we can do a full-time course for 2 weeks with 40 hours per week. Back to you, Richard. Sorry, forgot about this one. Yeah, can you go to the next one, please? Right, so there are some further offerings that would be useful for Communication Cloud. which is the OmniStudio developer, which we can teach, the industry CPQ developer, the service cloud consultant, the OmniStudio consultant, the platform developer, and marketing cloud. These are valuable information training courses for your teams to start a successful career in Communications Cloud. Now it's back to you.
Thank you, Rochus, Georgii, and Jeff. That was really insightful. We've got lots of questions, which is good to be ready. So some of the questions are based around the technical elements, a couple of them around the training. So if it's okay, I'll kind of leave you guys to jump in where they're most relevant. The first one, how to enable caching in the EPC related configuration. I'm aware some of these bits might be covered later on in the presentation as well.
Okay, Georgii, do you want to go into that?
Yeah, so in terms of cache, this can be used in EPC and CPQ in a couple places. So you want to check your CPQ configuration settings to make sure that cache is enabled in general. That's one. You want to set up cache for calculation matrices. This will cause the attribute-based pricing to be cached and improve the performance. That's another. And you also want to make sure that you have your cache partitions set up correctly. So let me find some links to some help documents that explain these three things. I'll put them in the chat and you can review those. Feel free to follow up with me if you have further questions.
Yeah, it's a good point on that one, because I think I personally have seen some of the very early implementations don't always have cache partitions set up. So yeah, double check. We'll send you the link to the documentation.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any options to limit the fields short payload in OOTB cart-based APIs to increase the performance?
Yeah, I can take this one. So for reducing the payload size of the card-based APIs, probably the best option is to use a hook and just filter out what is getting outputted from the APIs. I think the general benefit that will give you is that the payload going over the network will decrease, but ultimately the APIs will still, under the hood, like generate the whole response. So that's where you would get the benefit there. I think if you're really looking for a lean API response, look at the digital commerce APIs, which have smaller API responses, and you can use data raptors to trim what they're returning.
If I may just add to that, Georgii, excuse me. Every API we can reduce the number of fields, the number of information which is being sent to the server and being sent back. You can do this with send transformations on the OmniStudio itself, and in the data raptors also, as Georgii said.
Perfect. With regards to anonymous customer, if DC APIs is recommended, since it can scale and perform better, what would you recommend to use in terms of exposing catalog for an off-platform system for search or browse journey?
Okay, so I can take this one. I think this is basically saying that we have a catalog set up in Comms Cloud and EPC. We have another third-party platform for taking orders, and we want to kind of sync or push the catalog from the Comms Cloud EPC to this third-party platform. In the course, we actually have a piece of a module that talks about the options here. I would say at a high level, the options are you can do a catalog sync. For that, you can use the TM Forum 620 APIs, you can use the EPC APIs, you can kind of build a custom sync using an ETL tool. Another option is that you could use the digital commerce APIs for get offers and get offer details, where your other system will call these APIs to basically fetch the catalog and all the products it contains and the product structure, and then sync that internally in that other system to replicate the product catalog. So you have a couple options there. You know, feel free to register for the course and we'll do a deeper dive on that as part of the course as well.
How do you make sure we don't hit governor limits if implementations are complex, considering OOTB functionalities?
So Rochus, let me start on this and feel free to jump in afterwards. So I would say that the key thing is just be aware of all of the governor limits. If you haven't done so already, please do go on help.salesforce.com, search for governor limits, and just read through the whole thing and make sure you're aware of all of them. You know, the first step to not hitting it is to be aware of what you could potentially hit. I think the other thing to be considerate of is make sure that you're doing testing and make sure that you do it as early as possible. If you wait until, you know, the day before production or until you get into production to do performance testing, you're going to have a bad time. You want to do this as early as possible. So maybe, you know, you'll build an MVP of your product model, test everything thoroughly, see how it's performing. If you're starting to hit governor limits already, then you need to go back and fix some things. If the performance is great, then, you know, you should be set. But make sure to test and make sure to do it as early as possible. Rochus, feel free to add if anything else.
Yes, Jordan, thank you. This was exactly what I was thinking about. One thing which we could add would be to ensure that we don't have too complex product models, that we don't have too complex pricing rules. But what too complex means, it's a very fuzzy concept. In the end, as Georgie said, testing as early as possible is key to a successful project.
Thank you. Not able to pull attributes from JSON field at asset or order item in every project. Can you please help with same?
I would have to get more details about this question. Suresh, if you're able to share some more details. Basically, the attributes are stored depending on which version of JSON attributes you're using, V1 or V2. The attributes are stored in a field called JSON attribute for V1 or attribute selected values for V2. If you're using V2, it's actually pretty easy to just read it as a human and figure out what the attribute values are. If you're using V1, the JSON is really big and hard to deal with, but that field contains the attributes. And then in data raptors, you can use the @sign notation to extract attribute values so that you don't have to deal with parsing the JSON. So basically, look at using a data raptor and look at those fields, JSON attribute and attribute selected values.
Perfect. Second question is around the fitment of comms cloud, specifically around with organizations which are not true comms, but only limited to reselling consultant services, cloud services, global data center services, managed services. What is your view on the fitment of comms cloud in these areas?
So I'm happy to share my thoughts on this, but maybe Jeff, this is kind of a question around product fit. Do you want to share your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think ultimately it comes down to a set of requirements and capabilities. If that organization wants to be catalog driven, product led, wants to follow things like TM Forum best practice, then I would say Comms Cloud is a great, you know, could be a good fit. I mean, obviously we'd have to go into the details, but I think it really depends on a number of things. I think it's probably less relevant where you're just doing a kind of pure, where you're doing a more high-tech pass-through type scenario, or you're not looking to align with telco best practice. And TM Forum, to be clear, goes well beyond just traditional telco. It's being used by lots of organizations to standardize the approach to product and service separation and things like that. But I think it comes down to a number of things. I think it could be a good fit. It might not be. I think it really depends to what extent they're looking to do those other things. But if you want a solution that's catalog driven with an enterprise product catalog that feeds into order management and contract management and MACDs and all those sorts of things, then I would say it's at least a candidate.
Yeah, and just to add my thoughts around that, if we look at the main modules within Comms Cloud, we have EPC, CPQ, order management. If we look at Communications Cloud, Media Cloud, and Energy and Utility Cloud, all three of those contain those three modules. And why do those three industry clouds have those modules? It's because ultimately these are all services where the telco company or energy company or whatever is selling the service to the customer, And then that service goes through a lot of changes over time, and then, you know, maybe is replaced or terminated or whatever. So ultimately, if the core thing that you're selling is a service where you want to track that service, be able to take changes to that service over time, terminate it, those kind of things, in my opinion, are a good fit for Comms Cloud. So, you know, based on looking at this, these are all services, like managed services. You would purchase that, use it, maybe reduce your number of hours, terminate it after some time. You know, fundamentally, the products are similar to telco products. So I think it could make sense, but to Jeff's point, you know, validate your use cases and see if it fully aligns.
Thank you both. How does the DC API SDK help in developing the solution and required UI?
So the DC, okay, so when we have digital commerce, there are kind of two components that are involved here in this question. There's the digital commerce APIs. These are a set of APIs that exist in Salesforce for example, fetching the product catalog, getting the details behind a product, adding a product to the basket. This is basically the backend functionality. The SDK is kind of a layer on top of that to make it easier to call the API. So you don't need to know the exact like API name, build the JSON input for it, build it with exactly all of the parameters that you need. The SDK provides JavaScript methods that make it easier. So you do something like DC SDK dot add to basket, and then you pass it a basket ID. So then it will handle doing the API call, building the payload. It just makes it easier for you to interact with the with digital commerce rather than directly calling the API. So it's kind of a layer of abstraction to make it easier for you.
What is the difference between Salesforce CPQ and industry CPQ?
Yeah, so Salesforce CPQ is formerly known as Steelbrick. Industries CPQ is formerly known as Velocity. I would say the biggest difference is that industry CPQ is really meant for these industries where services is the main product that they sell. If we look at communications, media, energy, and utility, kind of touching on the comment on the last question, all of these industries are ultimately selling services where we sell the service, it goes through changes, it gets terminated. I would say Salesforce CPQ, in my opinion, the core strength is more selling physical goods rather than services, although they can do a bit of both. I would say kind of the main differentiator is what industry are you in? If you're in comms, media, or energy, that means you'll use industry CPQ. If you're in a different industry, then probably you'll use Salesforce CPQ.
Yeah, maybe to add to that, industry CPQ is streamlined with the industry processes, whereas Salesforce CPQ is the Salesforce is the CPQ rather directed to pure Salesforce processes. So if you're thinking about an industry project, you want to go for the industry CPQ. Also, order management picks up directly from industry CPQ. Which is a lot easier, a lot better integrated than with Salesforce CPQ.
Perfect. Okay, another for Rochus, actually, while you're on. Is this a paid course, and how would one register?
I think you missed one question in the middle, if I see it.
I've got that. If you cover this one, then I can go back to that one. Sorry, I've just seen that yet.
Yeah, sure. Is it a paid course? Yes, it is. How does one register? So on our website, which is www.revolentgroup.com, under train your team, you will there's a link to a Salesforce page, Salesforce specific page, where you can request trainings.
Perfect. You can also reach out on the info@revolentgroup.com email, or direct to myself at r.usher@revolentgroup.com for more information.
Right.
Back to technical. How is the product specification different than object type? How does the product specification help in simplifying the product modeling?
So object types are used to, you assign attributes to an object type, and then you create products or offers off of that object type, and it will inherit the attributes from the object type so that you don't have to assign attributes to every single product. You kind of assign them on a shared entity, and then they'll inherit the attributes. Product spec is a very similar idea, but it's primarily for child products. So you create a product spec, you assign it an object type, the object type will drive the attribute inheritance. And then the product spec, you will assign it child products. You create offers that realize the product spec, they will inherit the child products from the product spec, the attributes from the product specs object type, and then you can override the cardinalities to, for example, remove products if it's not, remove child products if they're not relevant for the current offer, that sort of thing. So I would say it simplifies product modeling by having additional entities where you can put the shared information, which is the child products, and then it makes it easier to create more offers over time so that you're not having to go through each offer and assign it child products.
And I think that's another area where, in particular, the TM Forum approach is interesting. It's not necessarily about fully being on one side or the other of the standard, but I think having an awareness of how the TM Forum recommends to manage products will inform how you manage, not only how you then represent them in Communications Cloud, but also your understanding of how those different layers and things like characteristics and stuff are designed to be used. Communications Cloud is fully TM Forum certified and compliant at both the catalog and the CPQ and order management level. So there are things which are done in a certain way to provide that industry standardization. They may not necessarily be done in exactly the same way in other parts of Salesforce, but it's aligning with the industry framework is a key benefit of the industry product as well.
Perfect. I'm not sure if you can see this one. I'm not 100% sure on it. So if Communication Cloud Suite has readiness for B2B telecom implementation, including the handling of order management, from the capabilities and best practice of product, it seems the suite is offering B2C telecom requirements, not fully B2B readiness. What are your thoughts?
Well,
so I would say on the Rochus, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I would say for B2B, the first place that you want to look is in the business applications or application suite. There is a module called Enterprise Sales Management. This is really meant for B2B customers to purchase a large number of services for a large number of locations at the same time, and then to be able to, manage the fulfillment of their orders. So an example use case could be, let's say we're a telco selling to a big global company like Coca-Cola. They want to order mobile plans for all of their employees across 10 different offices. ESM or Enterprise Sales Management provides a UI where you can upload all of the offices, upload all of the employees, select which offers that you want to give them, and then it will handle breaking that down into smaller orders and fulfilling them each independently. So I would say for B2B, look at ESM. It's quite powerful. There are customers in small, medium business, enterprise, wholesale that are using Comms Cloud and using ESM. So there's quite a lot of power there. And this is being enhanced a lot every release. So I think there will be even more good things to come from ESM in the future.
Perfect. The questions are still coming thick and fast, so we'll get through as many as we can before the end of the call. But if not, if people can maybe add them to the info at Revolent group, and we will come back to you if we don't get to those. Can we use Communications Cloud for workflow management, a kind of like SOM?
Yeah, so SOM stands for service order management. There are like different layers of order management. There's commercial order management, or COM, service order management, or SOM, and resource order management, or ROM. It goes from COM, SOM, ROM in terms of like level of complexity. Industries order management typically plays the role of COM, but it can also play the role of SOM. I would say the majority of customers that I've interacted with use it for the role of COM. There are a few exceptions where they use it for the role of SOM, and I'm not aware of customers using it for the role of ROM.
Rochus, what is the cost of the training?
The cost of training is something to discuss, I would think, with our training department. It depends on the situation. It depends on the number of participants we will have in the course itself. So I would propose to give a shout out to our sales team and get figures from there.
No problem. So we can come back to anyone with regards to particular questions on that and reach back out to you to confirm. I can make sure, yeah, someone is that relevant with the call. Someone can reach out to you.
Yeah. Or if you want to me directly via LinkedIn, I think I can point you to the right person without any problems.
How do we pull attributes from JSON attribute in SOQL?
So this is kind of similar to the previous question, I think, around the attributes in order items and assets. Basically, you need to look at the field that contains the attributes, either the JSON attribute field or the attribute selected value field, and then parse the JSON to pull out the attributes, or use a data raptor, which under the hood is doing just that.
Perfect. Okay. So how do you authenticate users if using digital gateways, APIs, but not the digital commerce? Do you need to have one license for every customer, or can you map accounts to your identity provider?
So for the digital gateway APIs, I'm assuming that this is referring to the Velocity Digital Commerce tier. This is a third party, or this is like a Salesforce application, but hosted on AWS that kind of acts as an additional caching layer between your client application and between Salesforce to help with scalability and improving performance. In terms of authentication, the DC tier would have to authenticate to Salesforce. I'm not sure of the details there, but I'm guessing it's using an integration user, and then it's up to you to decide how to integrate, how to authenticate from your client app to the DC tier. The DC tier isn't very commonly used by customers, so majority of cases you wouldn't have it, and you would just be authenticating to Salesforce.
Are admin, developer, or other SF certifications mandatory or recommended to take best advantage of the Comms Cloud course?
Yeah. So as I said previously, it is a prerequisite to have the Omni Studio certification and to have the industry CPQ developer certification, or to have at least 6 months so deep insight and experience to work with Omni scripts and to work with industry CPQ. It is not a, let's say, the certification is not a hard requirement, but we have seen in the past that the course becoming very frustrating for people that have not the necessary experience on industry CPQ and on Omni Studio, because they will not be able to follow the course. So it is not only recommended, it's highly recommended to have at least the Omni Studio and the industry CPQ dev, especially the industry CPQ dev certification, or sound experience in these areas.
Okay, thank you. Does it support asset creation?
I'm not sure exactly what this is asking, but yes, after order management does the whole fulfillment process, assets are created in Salesforce.
No problem. How do we get hold of the pricing of the course? Let me come back. I've just reached out to the sales team. Let me come back to you in 2 minutes on that, and we'll cover that at the end. Can you throw some light around the enterprise service management?
Yeah, so I think this is referring to enterprise sales management, which we just talked about a few questions back. If you're curious on more details around this, I would recommend going to the help docs and going to ESM, just kind of read through the use cases that it solves, what is included, etc. We also cover this in detail during the course as well.
Perfect. Use of link product in B2B.
So link product, I'm assuming that means, you know, how do we link connected products together? So let's say that a customer is buying dedicated internet access, and then they want to buy DDoS protection that applies to that dedicated internet access. We can link two separate line items or two separate products together via product relationships. And in enterprise sales management, there's out-of-box support to be able to define those relationships at runtime, where you can say that this specific internet access is linked to this specific DDoS line item. So the main use case is to connect different products that are dependent on each other.
No problem. In terms of the costing, so for one person to join the course is $4,500 US. For a cohort of up to 16 people is $50,000 US. So if a partner takes advantage of that, there's discounts based on one private cohort. But please do reach out to us, or I can come back to you with some more details and put you in touch with one of the sales team. Another question, I think, for me now, so will you provide job placements as well for people who work from India? So again, reach out to me directly. Revolent does bring that hire, train, deploy model, as I mentioned at the beginning of the program, where we cross-train people into the ecosystem and then place them with partners and customers to bring new talent into the Salesforce ecosystem and to upskill within niche areas. So reach out to me directly and I can put you in touch with one of the sales team for that. But ultimately, we have a hire, train, deploy program. Does Communication Cloud include Salesforce Service Cloud features, e.g. case management, queue groups, omni, channel, chatter groups, FSL, etc. or etc.
Yeah, let me pick that one. I think there's a little bit well, there's some mystery around how the industry stuff is packaged, but the simplest way to think of this is it's a super SKU. It inherits the full capability of either a sales cloud, a service cloud, or a sales and service cloud license, and then is extended for the industry. So I think in answer to your question, it does inherit all of the service cloud features. There's a couple of little points on there, particularly around field service, that we probably should pick up separately. But the answer is Comms Cloud is in fact a super SKU that includes the underlying sales or service edition as well. So the short answer is yes.
Excellent, thank you, Jeff. Is there any bulk order processing mechanism in Comms Cloud?
Short answer, yes. Longer answer, in ESM, you have the ability to take large quotes, so say for thousands of items, and then ESM will break those large quotes down into many orders. So if you have 1,000 items on your quote, you would end up with 1,000 orders, and then each order would be processed independently. So yes, basically that's how the bulk mechanism works. There's also a async framework, if you want to look that up, of how internally it does bulk operations.
Excellent. And that's our last question. So huge thank you to Rochus, Georgii, and Jeff. I think the huge amount of questions was testament to the insight that you all gave and the opportunity within communications. Again, anyone feel free to reach out to me with any direct questions and I can filter them to different parts of our business, whether it be around the technical piece or joining the training or the costings. But yeah, thank you very much everyone for joining. Have a lovely evening and thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.